The story is told about a senior citizen who went for his annual physical. As it was ending, he told his doctor that he thought his wife was losing her hearing, and he wondered how he could test it to see if this was the case. The doctor said, when you go home, call out to your wife when you enter the house and see if she responds. So when he got home, he entered the house through the front door and called out, "Hi, honey, I'm home. What's for dinner?" There was no response. He figured that she was in the kitchen, so he went into the living room and called out again, "Hi, honey, I'm home. What's for dinner?" Still no response. He did this a few more times until he ended up in the kitchen right next to her. He said again, "Hi, honey, I'm home. What's for dinner?" She looked at him and said, "Meatloaf," for the 6th time. Who is deaf and why? That's the question we face in all the readings that we have just heard proclaimed. But what have we heard? We begin with Isaiah and move 5 centuries down to the time of Christ. And then, as always, we must do, ask, what does all this mean for us some 2,000 years later? Our first reading is from the prophet Isaiah, but which Isaiah? There are 3 sections to Isaiah's narrative, and given the length of time of Isaiah's prophesying over 70 years, probably 3 different Isaiahs. The Isaiah before the exile, the Isaiah in exile, and the post-exilic Isaiah. Here in chapter 35, we hear Isaiah writing to the people of Israel in exile. The prophet is the messenger of God's good news and is announcing it to those who are broken by the hardships of life, those who are weak and filled with fear. God is coming to bring life. Isaiah describes 4 healing situations. The blind see, the deaf hear, the lame leap, the mute sing. These healings symbolize the transformative power of God who comes to save the people. Those who in any way are prevented from living life to the fullest will be freed from impediments and will sing and dance for joy. Moving ahead to today's gospel, Mark offers a vision of fulfillment of Isaiah's promise. Eyes opened, ears unstopped, hearts leaping for joy. Jesus proclaims by his actions that the messianic age has arrived and that he is the Messiah. He's more than just another miracle worker. A new age has begun. He calls it the kingdom of God. The geographical details of this story add essential information to the message. Jesus, you see, is outside the land of Israel. He's no longer in Jewish territory. Jesus is extending his mission and exercising his powers among the Gentiles and announcing he has come to save every person, not just the Jews. The crowd's faith brings the deaf and mute man to Jesus. The crowd stands in front of Jesus with the hope that God's power will act through him. They are not disappointed. The details of the healing are quite standard for this time, and they include taking the man aside, using touch, saliva, and a loud prayer. The miracle is accomplished by Jesus' command in Aramaic, his native language, "Ephphatha," be opened. It is the verbum efficax, the word itself, that effects the healing. In an oral culture, such as ancient Israel, where most people could not read or write, those who cannot hear are marginalized. This is further heightened by Israel's preeminent prayer, the Shema Israel, which translates, "Hear, O Israel." The deaf man could not hear the very covenant promises which his life and his faith were built upon. The evangelist Mark gives fresh meaning to this healing story by the place where he locates it. It is not only about the deaf man, but it also symbolizes what is happening to the disciples. They have been deafened to Jesus' word and, as of yet, are unable to make any confession of faith in him. Soon, however, at Caesarea Philippi, it will begin to dawn on them who Jesus really is, and Peter will make his confession of faith. Thus, the ears of his disciples will be opened, their tongues will be released, and they will speak plainly, declaring through their spokesman, Peter, "You are the Messiah." Jesus' acts of healing, while important in themselves, are also signs of how God is acting to heal and transform a world marred by sin and injustice. And this brings us to the perennial question of who is deaf and why. You see, the deaf man is all of us. What can't we hear? The cry of the poor? Could we get any clearer advice on how we are to do this than from St. James in today's second reading? He's not writing any speculative theology, but he's reacting to real hurts inflicted on real people and calling us all to a higher level of charity and responsibility. While we see Jesus eliminating distinctions between Jew and Gentile, the member of James's audience are reestablishing these divisions within their own community based upon wealth and status. The partiality James condemns permeates our world, our society, our church, and our hearts. We must allow Jesus to heal our spiritual deafness and muteness, and through us heal others who are deaf and mute. God gives us a charge to sense the plight of the poor. Jesus touches our ears and mouths and says to each one of us one powerful word, Ephphatha, be opened. Be open and perceive the injustice to the immigrant or other racial or ethnic minorities. Can we see them, or do we look the other way? Do we hear the cries of the poor, the pleas of injustice, or do we close our ears because it's too painful to listen to? Do we allow ourselves to become the voice for the voiceless and speak when something is wrong? Or do we keep silent because it's so much easier, even when we know that correction, challenge, or change is necessary in the face of death-dealing injustice? Like he did to the man in the gospel, Jesus lovingly touches us and says that one powerful word, Ephphatha, be opened. Open your ears, open your eyes, open your lips, open your hearts. Our ears have been opened to hear the good news of God's unconditional love. Our tongues have been loosened to speak out the truth that this unconditional love is for all, and no one is excluded.